Welcome to Weasel Gaming, and today we're going to be talking about the Galarian Darmanitan Theme Deck. This deck has 18 water energy, nothing else to worry about, straight up water energy. And for Pokemon, for your starters, you're going to be looking to get Wingle or Wishy-Washy. Wishy-Washy is very weak with only 30 health, doesn't have much for an attack, but has a deep sea swirl. It allows you to shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 8 cards. This is a super powered Cynthia that you can repeat all day long. It's really a nice card, especially starting off. Works also mid-game if you're running low on cards. Push a Wishy-Washy up front, throw an energy on him. You cycle your whole hand back into the deck. You draw 8 new fresh cards. That can really make a huge difference in making sure you get the cards you need. Wingle isn't bad. 1 energy, draw a single card. It's not a bad way to start. Wingle plays better later, but is not a bad starter if you have the option. Next two we're going to talk about, there aren't really any defense cards in this deck. There's nothing that's going to play defense or anything. But there's a couple cards that have some interesting rules. Suicune, had to look that up, how to pronounce it. Suicune is really not a great card. It's more of a stalling card when you need to just put something out there to hold the front line for a little bit while you build up something better. Suicune has 120 health, which isn't bad. A 1 energy attack for 20, which honestly isn't worth much. And then a 3 energy Aurora Loop for 130 damage. Now that's pretty impressive at first glance. 130 damage for 3 energy is not bad. However, once you start looking into it a little bit more and you see that you have to take 2 energy attached to Suicune and put it back in your hand. Sure, you don't lose that energy, it doesn't get discarded, but it's going to be hard to keep Suicune as a consistent attacker. You're going to lose 2 energy. It's likely going to take you 2 rounds to get back to that, which means your next round, you're only going to be able to do 20 damage to Suicune. Otherwise, you have to retreat Suicune back to your bench and build up energy again, or use a switch or something. But it's really a tough card to use, except in those extreme situations where you're really desperate. Suicune tends to play as just a staller. When I need something that's going to be able to take a round or 2 of hits while I do something else. You could stack energy on Suicune and keep them up front, but with only 120 health, that's really dangerous because there's a lot of Pokemon that can knock that out in one shot. The other one to talk about is Kangaskhan. I think Kangaskhan is kind of underrated and gets overlooked once in a while. 130 health isn't bad. The rally back attack is really the one that's kind of interesting because you can have Kangaskhan sitting on your bench with 1 energy, just waiting. When one of your other Pokemon get knocked out, you can bring Kangaskhan back out to the front, throw another energy on him, and do rally back, which is 30 damage, plus an additional 90 if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during the last round. That means you're going to do 120 damage in return, which is enough to do a considerable amount of damage and knock out quite a lot of Pokemon. Depending on what your opponent can bring in after that, you could put another energy on Kangaskhan and keep him in there doing hammer in for 100 damage every round after that. So he's not a bad card to respond to the opponent's plays and when they knock out one of your Pokemon. Next up, we're going to talk about Wingle and Pulepper. Wingle, we already talked about, is a good drawing card, good starter to use to get the game rolling. However, Pulepper, the evolved version, is very interesting. For 2 energy, you have a 50 damage wing attack. That's often enough to finish off Pokemon and take out some basics. The Power Cyclone is really nice though. 3 energy, 110 damage. I wish it was a little bit higher, but 110 is not bad. And when you use this attack, you move 1 energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. This deck is really, really energy efficient, so you tend to have a lot of energy. So you can almost always keep Power Cyclone rolling for multiple rounds. And what's nice about it is you put that energy out there, you use Power Cyclone, that pushes that energy back to the bench somewhere. So you're just building up your bench Pokemon anyways. So it's a really nice little attack. I like doing it a lot. I like using Pulepper in this deck a lot because not only are you doing damage, but you're also getting your bench Pokemon ready to go once they knock out Pulepper. The other nice part about Power Cyclone is when the enemy does knock out Pulepper, you're only losing 2 energy instead of 3 because you've been cycling that energy back to your bench consistently. Next up is Cubchoo and Beartick. Cubchoo is very unimpressive as a basic. That's understandable. Beartick, however, is kind of interesting. 140 health, which isn't bad. 2 energy slash for 40 damage is not that impressive. But the 3 energy frozen slice for 150 damage is very impressive. That's a lot of damage. It's going to be able to knock out a lot of basic Pokemon, but just a lot of Pokemon in general in the theme decks. This Pokemon also does 50 damage to itself, though, which is the downside. Beartick doesn't get to do that damage for very long. Unopposed without any damage coming from the enemy, you have 3 rounds. So you have to use that wisely. I tend to keep kind of Beartick. It's not my first Pokemon I'm going to power up. If I'm cycling energy back from Pulepper, I'll be putting some on Beartick if I don't have any other choices. But Beartick's usually going to be kind of a backup for me. Come in, do a lot of damage towards the end to knock out that last 1 or 2 guys that you need to knock out. Next up is Darumaka and the Darmanitans. Darumaka, as you can see, is just a very basic Pokemon, nothing all that special. We're not going to focus on him too much. But you do have 2 choices for your Darmanitans, which is very interesting. Your water-based Galarian Darmanitan has Blizzard for 80 damage, plus this attack does 10 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, giving you a possibility of 130 damage if they have a full bench. Even more if they're weak to your water attacks. You also have Crushing Headbutt, which is 4 energy for 170 damage, which is a huge hit. Galarian Darmanitan's only downside really is the relatively low health. There are a number of Pokemon out there that could knock him out in 1 attack. So you have to be a little careful about when you're going to use him. But if you do get him out there, it's really nice. You use the Crushing Headbutt, do the 170, knock out something big. And then next turn, you're going to use that Blizzard, and you're going to injure everything on their bench, plus do 80 damage to their active Pokemon. If you're lucky enough to you knock out the big threat with that 170 damage, you can just ride Blizzard for 2-3 turns in a row, knocking out whatever basic stuff they're just feeding to you and doing considerable damage to their bench. So all around great card, kind of a weaker, softer form of the Rillaboom, but very impressive card, very useful. The other evolutionary form is Galarian Darmanitan Fire type. Again, 140 health, a 40 damage, 1 energy Headbutt, which isn't all that amazing. The 3 energy Frozen Heat does 110 damage, which is pretty good. And you may discard all water energy from this Pokemon, and if you do this, it does 60 more damage for a total of 170 damage, which gets you back up to that Crushing Headbutt value. Now you do have to discard all 3 energy you have on there. So you're throwing that away. It's kind of a desperation type thing. I'll typically not use the fire-based Darmanitan unless I'm facing something that's weak to fire damage. So, a lot of grass types, metal types, those kind of situations. Then I'll be trying to pull out our fire type Galarian Darmanitan and just using Frozen Heat without discarding that energy, because you're going to be able to do good damage. In a pinch, you can use this Darmanitan at other times too, because he's not bad. But that does give the deck a lot of flexibility. So next up, we're going to talk about the various trainers that we have in the deck. You do have 4 hops and 2 professors. That gives you a lot of drawing and cycling ability. Hop draws 3 cards. You have 4 of that in your deck. Professor discards your hand to draw 7 other cards. Kind of a double-edged sword, but as long as you don't have anything all that important in your hand, it's not a bad way to really cycle that deck and get some more cards out that you need to really make those big plays. You're a little bit limited in finding Pokemon. You don't have any abilities on any of your Pokemon to find other Pokemon. You do have 2 Great Balls, I should say. Allows you to search the top 7 cards for any Pokemon. And you have Sonia, which can be used to pull 2 basic Pokemon or 2 basic energy. And that's kind of the trade-off there. Sometimes you really need the Pokemon, sometimes you really need the energy. You have to play that in whatever way works best for you at that time. But the option is there. Speaking of energy, this deck has a lot of good options when it comes to energy. There's, of course, the Capacious Bucket. This allows you to search your deck for 2 water energy cards, and that's really helpful. This deck has some higher energy usage. Not amazingly high, but it does take some energy to really get going. If you have Pulepper out there, you need to be pulling an energy every single round. So having the bucket will keep your hand stocked with energy. But you also have Hop for drawing lots of cards. You have Sonia. So there are some other options. Also, for energy manipulation, you have Bead, who will attach a basic energy card from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon. That'll help get your benched Pokemon up to power. And when you lose energy, you do have 2 turbo patches that you can use to assign that energy back to basic Pokemon. Make sure that you understand that it is just basic Pokemon. So if you have, Darmanitans in your bench, you're not going to be able to buff them with turbo patches. And last but certainly not least, you do have some ability to switch Pokemon out. You have 2 switch cards and 2 bird keepers. The nice part about Bird Keeper is when you do the switch, you also draw 3 cards. So it's a draw and a switch combined, which is pretty powerful. Again, those draws help you get more energy to keep that energy flowing through this deck. These switchers really aren't used all that tactically, but they can be used to pull back Pokemon that may be in danger or to swap out based on types that you're facing. Speaking of types, this deck actually doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. The Darmanitans and the Beartic are weak to, I guess I should say, just the water Darmanitan and the Beartic are weak to metal. But then again, the rest of your deck really isn't. And your fire-based Darmanitan is going to be strong against metal decks. You also have a colorless Pokemon, the Kangaskhan. You have some flying types, so they're weak to energy, to electric, but they're strong against fighting. So you really have a lot of different ways to counter different type advantages against you. You have a wide selection of cards you can use. You have to be a little careful. You're facing a metal deck. You have your fire-based Darmanitan. You have your Pulepper that you can use, Kangaskhan, and you save Beartic and Darmanitan for those key moments. Or you get the Fire Darmanitan out there to do damage to them. So it's a deck that's pretty easy to adapt to the different theme decks that you might be facing with the different energy types. We'll look at the charts now. We can see here it's a pretty high-powered deck. Beartic hits hard, Darmanitans hit hard, Pulepper's not bad, so it does have a power rating of 4. The speed on this, and speed's referring to how fast the deck can really get up to speed to start doing damage. It's a 2, maybe bordering on a 3. It's got some lower energy cards that can start doing some damage early on, but it's not amazingly fast. Agility is related to how fast it can get Pokemon on the bench and get them evolved up. And again, we're looking at a 2 here. There's not a lot of ways to pull Pokemon with this deck. There's not a lot of ways to get the evolutions you need. You're really kind of based on just that draw, but you have a lot of draw cards, so there's a good chance you're going to be able to get moving. This is a very efficient deck. Efficiency deals with energy. How easy is it to have the energy on hand when you need it? To draw that energy, to pull that energy, to recycle that energy from the discard, or recycle other cards from discard. And this is a highly efficient deck. With Sonia, Capacious Bucket, all the draws you have, Bead, Turbo Patch, you have a lot of ways to play with that energy, and your Pokemon are not super high energy needs. So chances are you're always going to have more than enough energy on hand to play your deck however you need to play it. For complexity, this is a very easy deck to play. There really isn't any kind of sneaky plays in here. There's nothing you can really do. It's a straightforward deck. That's just a power deck. Resiliency is only a 2. You don't have the highest hit points on any Pokemons. You really don't have any defensive Pokemon. There isn't much here you can do to defend yourself if things are going bad. Type ability, though, this is a strong suit for this deck. You have a couple different types of Pokemon. You have a lot of different resistances and a lot of different weaknesses. So you can really adapt to whatever situation the enemy player, the opposing player, is throwing at you. And you have a couple switchers and bird keepers there to rotate Pokemon in and out as needed. As far as manipulation, there is none. There's no cards in this deck that allow you to manipulate the opposing player's deck or playfield in any way, shape, or form. So it's just a straightforward power deck. It's a great deck. It's strong against a lot of the big, strong decks right now. The stronger theme decks. The Charizard one that I can't think of the name. But any kind of fire deck, it's really powerful against, and it gives you a lot of options to play against a lot of different decks. So this is a great all-around theme deck that holds out really well, and I really don't see that changing much as this generation continues. So hope you got some useful information, and please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.